Hi everyone, I have Seth Dove with me on our latest edition of Caffeine and Carrots. He is a Senior Director of Customer Success with Chili Piper. Hey Seth, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me today.
So we were discussing on the changing trends in CS now that we are coming close to the new year, 2023, and you had some interesting thoughts on what you've been noticing within Chili Piper as well as overall in the industry towards the direction that we're heading on. Would love to hear your thoughts on them.
Sure. So for those of you who don't know what Chili Piper is, so Chili Piper is an advanced scheduling and routing software for B2B revenue teams. And our products help revenue teams double their inbound conversion rates and increase customer satisfaction. And really, ideally, our technology is really there to help reach new levels of productivity for anyone using it. 2023, I can't believe we're almost there. And I think that this past, I'd say second half of 2022 has been a bit volatile. And, a lot of our customers, being B2B, we also have very SaaS tech focused customers. And what we're seeing is a lot of consolidation across the board. I think some people are feeling a bit uncertain of where the market's going. And I think people are just trying to hold the line and hold on to, their customers. So I think that with that, there's this major hyper focus on NRR, especially from a cross-sell perspective. And I think that people are looking to find ways, especially from a CS perspective, to be included in any type of customers, tech stack consolidation. So I would say that's number one, is a hyper focus on your current customer base and making sure that you're a must-have tech. I think that a lot of people are starting to think about how they can do, of course, this digital customer success or one-to-many approaches. How can we leverage automation? What can we do more with less for the time being? So I would say that that's kind of what I'm starting to see or have seen, and I think it's probably going to continue to at least the first half of next year.
Sure, and we are also in addition to what you mentioned, we are also noticing a trend of it moving towards a focus more on expansion, and this is probably in line with the fact that you're focusing more on the NRR and your existing customer base, and the customer success team having a lot of, a big role to play in actually expanding their current book of business. And so a lot of focus from not just the customer success teams, but the board as well as the C-suite is on how, you can expand the current book of business. Is that something that you're noticing as well?
Yeah. From the executive level all the way up to the board and all the way down. Yes. I think that if you take into consideration, I think there was a stat that I read recently, or maybe not recently, but it was like it costs 5x more to bring in a net new business than to retain it. So I think that with that mindset, it's very important, strategic, and it's a great way to focus on what you can actually control, which is your customer base as it stands, versus finding and exploring new. And again, there's always going to be that sales perspective and motion, but what can you do with what you have at that moment, I think is key.
Right. And so in light of these moving trends, how has it impacted the way you evaluate or look at your existing customer base? Do you see it any different, or do you slice and dice it any different as what you were probably a year before?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that with all the market changes from, Google and Twitter and Meta, et cetera, some of the big players in tech making those major shifts or also reductions. So workforce reductions, I think it's definitely something that we're seeing, that we're unfortunately having to navigate as well. I think that the real piece here is really understanding your customers, and however you break them up or support them is a real big element of what you can do. From Chili Piper's perspective, we have 25 CSMs and a larger CS org that has some specific niche roles. But at the end of the day, I consider our team and our resources a commodity, and that commodity is time. So we need to make sure that anytime we're speaking or interacting or engaging with a customer, whether it's directly or on a call or from a campaign or a messaging, time is our commodity. So we have to use our time as efficient as possible. So we've actually redefined what our customer segmentation and what our customer segments are, because we needed to make a move, especially where we are in our maturity curve. So when I started, we were about, 4 CSMs. I was brought in with some additional leadership, and we grew the team about 400% in 2021. And with that, it was focusing on foundational elements, processes, customer journey, all the basics. This year, with this investment of CS, along with investments in other departments, we've seen our business and our customer base increase like 4x. So with that, the way that we segmented historically, which was really focused on just employee size, didn't fit the need of the moment where we're at right now. And we were disproportionately supporting different types of customers where we probably should have spent more time as our commodity focusing on some other ones. So that's really what the exercise we're actually working on even today, and really hoping to make sure that we have this very structured for the year to come.
Sure, and that's a great point to make about the bringing in the efficiency, right? So as you're changing your focus, as you're looking at things differently and trying to make the team more efficient, what are different aspects that you look at in terms of just the efficiency within the team, as well as the interactions, the way they have these interactions with their customers? How are you able to navigate that and help them or coach them along the way?
It's a good one. And I think it's a tough one. I think it depends on the business. I mean, our CSMs are highly technical. So we focus on, I would say, really 2 to 3 major phases of our customer journey. Our customer journey is, pre-sale, and then onboarding once they purchased. Adoption is year 1, and growth is year 1+. Right. So we are really focusing on understanding how we can leverage our own technology, because Chili Piper has some pretty cool, spicy tech to help with efficiencies, to ensure that the time that we have with our customers is scalable. So instead of wasting time, figuring out who the right person it is to onboard that customer, we leverage our round robining system and framework to be able to let all of that work done. So from a management perspective, a lot of the heavy lifting is automated. So with our criteria and routing rules, we can get that time to value as quick as possible by connecting that customer as soon as they purchase to the right people and get things in motion. Right. In the adoption perspective, I think it's really dissecting every touch point within each phase and really understanding what are the must-haves, what are the nice-to-haves, or this could be really cool. Yeah. And also keeping it authentic. It's hard to do at scale. And I think that when we have different types of customers, let's say that are in more that enterprise level, there's a lot more interaction from a daily or weekly perspective versus a customer maybe on the other side of things, a smaller business that is really just leveraging the tech. Their touch points might not be as needed. They both need the same kind of information, but how we deliver it can be different. That's the scale piece that I think that we try and do. And I'm pretty confident. I think you can see that too with your customer base, that's what they're trying to do is what is that right message and how do we deliver it?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And so what we've seen now recently with a customer base who's using one of the functionalities that we've released recently called Smart Conversations is utilizing that as a leader to analyze the way the CSMs are interacting with the customers, the ability to coach them on what sort of conversations to better have to deliver that value. And so maybe what I do over 10 calls, I could probably do it in 3 calls if I'm being more efficient and more, being able to demonstrate that value in a more timely fashion. And so the ability to, provide one, coaching through these, nuggets that you get as a leader, and two, also be able to across board, especially with so many customers that you have and a large team, being able to be, stay on top of how these calls are going and receive a call sentiment. So did these set of calls go, really bad? Or did the customers use negative words like, legal or competitor, or, some of those, versus positive ones, which says that, the appreciating your team or appreciating the product. And so without having to run through everything, receiving just those sentiments from the customers' conversations. So that's something that we're seeing a lot of our customers leverage to actually make more, quality conversations.
Now, question on that, is that based off of video, email, Slack? What are the communication lines that you're able to assess that? Because that's a huge indicator.
Yeah, as part of this first pass, it's video conversation. So a similar conversation on a Zoom or online is what is captured today, and the sentiment is pulled off that. And
Great.
we are looking at maybe in the future expanding that as we get feedback on how this is.
Yeah, that's great, because I think that a lot of CS tools have features where we can, let's say customer health in general, you have a holistic score and then different types of touch points, whether it's product related or if ticket related, but then there's that human element from a CS side that can provide that perspective and score it based off of a meeting that went well or poorly. Right. Or just the feedback that they receive to score that. Right. But it sounds like what you guys are able to do is automate that. And again, from a one-to-many approach or an automation approach, as your customer base grows, you're not going to always have the same signal and the same resources to be able to catch that one piece that can help prioritize that customer at that moment and provide maybe, let's say, a PXR or a performance experience recovery, or just an additional outreach, making sure that their voice is heard. So that's pretty awesome and really powerful.
Yeah. It is. And so far, the feedback has been great. Now, moving on to what we were, talking about, the interactions between the CSMs and the customers, the end goal being the value that you're driving across, right? And so, as you mentioned, the way you also break down the customer's journey, from your new customers who are an onboarding to an adoption to a growth phase. Now, the sort of value that you are looking at driving on is very different depending on the different phase of the journey. And so do you also, follow the standard industry metrics of time to first value followed by the incremental value, or do you do it any differently? Or have you seen, this being better if it's done differently?
Good question. So I think, yes, ultimately, yes, it's all about time to value, and especially first value, because, I think that especially in SaaS, when a customer makes a commitment to use a technology, they're at probably the most vulnerable point. They've gone through a sales process. They think that they know everything, but there's that relatively unknown. So that's a vulnerability that the CS team, or even onboarding, that time to first value is really key. So we do it a couple of ways. I think the first piece is something that we try and capture pre-sale, is we, of course, setting expectations, but we leverage what we call the big six. And these are big six questions that help us really understand, so that there's not a lot of redundancy when you shift from pre-sale to sale to onboarding. So that's persona, who's the end user, use case, how they intend to use the tech and what features, what's their business objective, which we all try and capture, I think, in CS. Why do they intend to use it? Because that's the difference between the use case is how and the business objective is why. KPIs, so we want to try and start to understand how they're going to measure success, and hopefully find what I like to call like a quantitative metric that we can provide so that it directly correlates to that ROI. Baselines, so can we say where did we start and where we can hopefully get to, and then key milestones. Like, it's not about milestones of using the tech, it's for their business. So we try and capture all that information, because what we found is if we can get this beforehand and have our sales team and solutions consultant make sure it's vetted and given to us, we can save another one meeting, one meeting
Yeah.
for one customer onboarding is time to first value. And we can get in on focusing on not everything about Chili Piper, because it's almost like a Lamborghini of automation technology, but what will get them to start the car, and feel confident in starting to navigate. And I think that that's a big element that we try and do, and leveraging tools, like a CS tool to be able to capture it and then validate it and iterate really helps us keep in line for the long term. So I guess to answer your question, long story short is time to first value is really key. You have to have, of course, the right people, qualify questions, and know exactly what that customer is looking for so that you can fine tune and adjust what you're trying to get them to do for them to see first value.
Oh, that's
that
awesome. Yeah, it does totally. And I just had a follow-up question on that for you on, how do you measure your incremental value, right? So your time to first value is a little bit easier to measure because your time, it's sort of time bound that once a customer signs up, when is the first time they start seeing value, and the incremental value, which you need to keep delivering every once in a while. How do you measure that? How do you ensure that that's going out at a good frequency as well?
Yeah. I think that there's a couple different avenues. I think at the end of the day is I think NRR is a really good indicator, or LRR, right? Because at the end of the day I think that that's what investors look for. I think that that's what executives look for. And that's really what keeps the lights on in the tech world is when you have this customer, what did you do within that first year? And where did they net out in 366 days from now? So can you look back and say, hey, we've grown this X%. Well, how have you done that? And that's where another metric could come in, right? You could say, okay, from a qualitative metrics, maybe NPS, right? So there can be some feedback that you get in different phases that you can signal out and receive back to understand where they are, see if they're getting value or not. What we actually like to ask during solutions reviews or QBRs and even success meetings is, if you were to renew today, would you?
Right.
And that could be 6 months in, and that can really help make either course correct, but also really make sure that we are aligning with those big six and their expectations. And then we also have another program that really helps and incentivizes the CSMs who are not commercially focused. We have an account management team that are the commercial leads and the post-sales to help be the eyes and ears on the ground. And similar to what I think the SDR to AE handoff is when they hear something, they qualify an opportunity. We have a CSQO, a CS qualified opportunity, where if we're having a conversation with the customer, we identify a potential need, maybe it's a different product or a different team that could leverage Chili Piper. We have a workflow and automation using Chili Piper to get the meeting booked on behalf of the AM, and for them to help push for those cross-sell opportunities and really basically throw it right into the hands of the AMs to really focus on exploring and hopefully closing those opportunities. So that is a direct correlation back to what you're asking is, well, how do you improve that value? You do it by showing value, and if you find opportunities, you have to, as a CS leader, be able to quantify it, and that's what we're trying to do.
No, that's a good one, and I think based on what you're saying is it is working for the way you're structuring it. So that's great. Now, in light of these metrics, and also part of our earlier conversation, I know you were mentioning that a lot of decisions that are being made at Chili Piper is based on data, right? So they're data driven, and so I know data, and I've come across this through numerous conversations, that data does play a big part on how you put your conversations, your strategies, and a lot of other things. And so what data is important and how you leverage it is a bigger piece, right? So you have a ton of data, so you have multiple sources, you have so much volume of this data. So how do you make sense of it today in helping you take the right decisions?
That's a great question. And, we're learning, we're growing, we're iterating, and I think that any person in CS has to be able to be a bit agile and be able to, go in different directions and then pivot where you need to, but pivot when the data is telling you that. So what we've done, obviously, it takes a village. So it's not just CS. I think for us, it's first is making sure you have data hygiene, number one. And that's something that we're working really hard on. And it takes time. Different people come and go, and different people have different processes, but we really want to try and have alignment with our data team and having a data warehouse, right? To be able to really be able to have a center, a source of truth, and then to be able to push that out, across whatever system, whatever team, and have hopefully that same consistent data. That's part one. I think the other thing is, for us, when we have to make a decision, it is data driven. So we actually practice what we call decision memos at our company, which is really a way for us to work, make changes pretty quickly, but leverage data and rationale to help really move that in motion quite quickly. And I think it's another piece that's important is you have to also be able to do it kind of asynchronous, like on an async, right? You can't always have a meeting every time you go through a specific project because there's only a certain amount of time in the day. So what we found to be really helpful is to have a format that anyone in the company can create a decision memo, have a specific executive leadership to kind of sign off on, but also have transparency so that other people can put their input in. It's not a democracy, but it helps create a community of ideas, but have the data to help drive whatever change the business needs. And it's been pretty successful, and it does take time, but I think that process for us at Chili Piper and where we are in our business, it really helps, but we couldn't do it without data. And that's really from a top down. It has to prove value and be the right move for our business, which is really data focused.
Yeah, no, and I agree. I think this is, what you're saying is the sentiment probably echoed by the industry, that's the best way to move ahead, where you're data backed rather than making decisions based on assumptions or, just gut feels, right? So the data backed decisions are more solid and helps you take better way forward. And so what we've been, doing within our customer base, what we've seen is, with the intelligence that they've been receiving, cutting out the noise, right? So because of this, the quantity of data that's available, cutting the noise out and giving them just what's important, that's work for them, one. And backing up on that, what we're seeing is we're sort of using a little bit of machine learning at the background now to provide them something called a smart ops, right? And this involves intelligence of different types, right? Adoption intelligence, engagement intelligence, risk intelligence. Now, what this does is takes in all the underlying data and puts together signals to let you know statistics or things that would help you drive some of these decisions. For example, imagine you were using your data and then the industry benchmark data. You were told that your renewals are going to be a lot more successful if you have 5 touch points before the renewals showcasing value. And this is not just a random piece of insight. It's actually backed by your own data as well as industry backed data, that this is what is working. If you want higher renewals, this is what works. If you want a higher adoption, involvement from top management into the entire process helps drive this up 20% more. So if you had stats like these that help you increase your engagement, help you increase your adoption, thereby impacting your bottom line or your top line, right?
That'd be huge. I mean, that's huge, right? That's almost like it's giving like the blind a little bit of sight and guidance, and to know exactly when it's all about the optimal touch points and frequency capping, right? You don't want to bombard someone. If I get a couple emails from someone that's looking to connect and they're just very, very persistent in a way that is too much, then you have that burn. So it's finding that right frequency, and making sure that the data behind it will help prove out ROI, that this is the right touch point or path to success. That's great.
Yeah, and it ties into what you were mentioning earlier, right? Like, what do you consider a baseline as? What is the right number of touch points? Or a specific industry using your product is, at 30% adoption, but maybe that's because of their needs and their outcomes, which is very different from another industry that you're catering to, which needs to be at 70% adoption of your product. And so you can't have a common baseline just across board. And so in line with your, tying it together to what you said, you're segmenting your customers based on their needs and outcomes and how they are to utilize your product, to bring in the efficiency to having a baseline. How do you tie all of these two things together? And what are you making your decisions based on? So if you have some of this data that backs you saying, if it's a retail industry that's using you, they need to have at least 50% adoption. The right number of touch points is 3, because that's what has worked in the past. If it's any more, they seem to be turned off. So you need to have not any more than that. So a lot of this tied through with data helps you drive or arrive at those baseline, decisions that what do you do? How much do you do?
Yeah, I think saturation, adoption, touch points, all of these are signals at the end of the day. These are all ones and zeros. And with the AI being able to learn from existing data from your own set, did they renew or not? Did they expand or not? What vertical are they coming from? From a utilization perspective, how your, major drops for a specific, is there seasonality? There's so many different things that a tool, CS tool, can provide, and that I think a lot of CS leaders we rely on now. I think that another good takeaway that I've seen, coming back full circle to like the 2023 topic, is that I think that we've seen a ton of new different types of tools and technologies, whether it's niche and maybe an onboarding tool, or new players in the overarching kind of CS tool platform. It's becoming recognized and not a nice to have, but a must have, right? We can't leverage just a CRM anymore. We can't leverage just internal products and data points to help. You need something at a certain, part of a maturity to be able to leverage this data at scale.
No, absolutely. And I think that was a wonderful summation of it. And so we hope everyone listening in also benefits and can add in their thoughts and comments on what they see as, the new trends, the changing, emerging markets, emerging CS space in 2023, and add on their thoughts with this.
Yeah, this has been super great. Thank you for letting me come onto the podcast, and wishing anybody and all your listeners a happy New Year and a happy holiday season. And let's keep this CS thing a rolling. So congrats to all you guys at Smart Carrot. You guys do wonderful stuff.
Thanks.
Cheers.
Thanks
Yeah.
for